My name is Esteban Serrano, and I am a rap nerd. Um, I get paid now to be a rap nerd, but it wasn't something that was cool all my life growing up, just vicariously living through, rap music. Growing up in West Philly, born and raised. Yeah, I grew up at an amazing time in the hip hop scene in Philadelphia, specifically in my neighborhood, because Fresh Prince, aka Will Smith, was still in high school, and he was very much, becoming the star that he is today, but still very accessible. We went to the same barbershop, so I'd see him every Saturday, and we would sit there for hours waiting for the two barbers there to be available to cut our hair. And then, in would walk the Fresh Prince in all his glory, and he would sit right in the chair, and there would be a line of guys there ready to battle him every Saturday, and he would just demolish these poor guys who would come in trying to test, his throne. So yeah, that was an amazing time. And also on the other side of town, my father was living with and dating the mother of another really big rapper in West Philly. His name was Steady B. So I would ping pong between my mother's house and my father's house, and it was just like hip hop at both places all the time. So I had a ridiculously unique POV and vantage point, because I was in the living room when one really big rapper from Philly was cutting his teeth and writing songs or rehearsing or auditioning beats or whatever. And then I was on the other side of town with the other really big rapper who was just slaying would-be competitors that would bother him while he was trying to get his haircut. He had really big ears, and trying to get around those ears with the clippers and rapping at the same time. It was amazing. But fell in love with hip-hop from that moment. When it came time for me to start thinking of a career being professional, that was literally my life's work. So I'm like, all right, well, MTV is it. I gotta work there because that's the only place that does music all the time, and I need to be in the mix. So I aimed for MTV. I had no plan B and didn't want to work anywhere
No
else.
plan B. That was
No,
it. Yeah.
that was it. I was like, if this doesn't work, then I'm just going to, sleep on my mom's couch for the rest of my life. So yeah, once I got in that building, I would sleep there some nights just because I didn't want to go home all the way back to Philly from New York. I was ping-ponging back and forth. And I was just there. I was in my happy place. And that was 20 years ago. And so for 20
Wow.
years,
Wow.
I've been
Congratulations.
yes, thank you. I've been making, music television. Um, Very recently, last year, I got to relaunch Yo MTV Raps, which was the show that I grew up watching in my living room in West Philly. Yeah,
Wow.
which made me fall in love with hip hop from a visual standpoint, especially from a visual standpoint. And that was when the seed was planted that I wanted to work on music television, specifically on the visual side of things. And yeah, we relaunched it in Asia and the UK, but last year we got to relaunch it here in the States, and it's been an amazing full circle moment for me. But this year marks the 50th anniversary of hip hop. And so I'm like, what can I contribute that would be different from retrospective or anything like that? And one of my favorite experiences being a hip hop fan, especially, being so close to artists and music, is the fatherhood journey that a lot of these artists are on. And when I was producing and when I was on air, that would be my icebreaker. Whenever I knew an artist was a father or a new father, I would ask them, things that would kind of throw them off. Like, oh, so how many times have you been peed on so far? And then they're like, what? Yeah, I got peed on yesterday. So, that type of thing. And I became a father when I was 22. I'm 40. I'll be 42 this year. Um, so it's been a very, very big part of my life. Hip hop also a very big part of my life. So talking about hip hop with some of my favorite dads and favorite rappers has been a fun journey. So I decided to turn it into this book The
Yeah.
10 Dad Commandments, and that is my chubby son spilling out of his diaper on the cover right there.
That's so
Um,
cute.
this is inspired by Biggie. Biggie had a song called the 10 Crack Commandments that taught people how to sell crack. I didn't think that was cool, so I wanted to do the 10 Dad Commandments and teach people how to be great fathers. And yeah, learned a lot from Biggie and his style of writing and the simplicity of which his lyrics he wasn't the biggest vocabulary of all time, and he did that to be much more accessible. And that's why, we still love Biggie to this day, even though he passed away, I think about 15 years ago now. No, even longer than that. But we still love him. His music still resonates because it's like a warm hug when you hear it. So yeah, that's how I got here.
That's wonderful. Do you think of your book as a warm hug?
I do. I think of it as a warm hug. Sometimes it's a slap on the wrist. Sometimes it's a smack upside your head, depending on where you are in your fatherhood journey. But yeah, and the reception to me has been the most amazing part. Like I've been sent screenshots of like different men's group chats with friends that have been like, oh, chapter 5 is crazy. You gotta I didn't never thought of it this way, or this is something that I'm experiencing right now. I had another friend of mine who's not even a father yet. I think his wife is 6 months pregnant, and he said he bought my book, read it in a week, and he was like, I was terrified before I read your book, and now I'm like, there's like a cape on my back. I'm ready to take it
Oh.
on. And that's like the greatest compliment in the world. Yeah, everything in my life is viewed through the lens of hip hop. That's why it's called the 10 Dad Commandments, fatherhood through the lens of hip hop. But everything in my life is seen through hip hop eyes. When certain people say certain words or phrases, it reminds me of lyrics, and then the whole song will play in my head while we're having a conversation. It's something I can't escape, but it's been my superpower.
So could you walk us through either 10 of the commandments or 2 of the commandments, however many commandments you would like to share? And then I'd love to know the inspiration for them.
Yeah. So let me crack it open and let me go to the table of contents. Boom. Um I mean, first and foremost, commandment number 1 is know your role. What is a father? So you cannot fulfill a role that has not been defined. So you
Right?
need to know what these roles and responsibilities are. That one's a big one for me because oftentimes in your mind, you may have your own idea of what a dad is. And it's like, oh, dad is the guy who goes out and works and comes home and, kicks his shoes off and sits on the couch and is, catered to. And then when dinner comes, he's the first one to eat. And, you better not sit in dad's chair, but that's completely not what fatherhood is. And the way I define it is I'm a servant. I'm the last to eat, I'm the last to go to sleep at night. I'm the one who is making sure that everyone else in the house is taken care of, and I get whatever is left. And that's kind of the position that I play, the role that I play in my choice of a father. I'm not in any way, shape, or form an entitled dad. I am, very much a servant of any and every one who, I brought into this world.
So
So
explain to me, hold on though.
mhm.
I love that. And how lucky for your kids and your wife
Oh God,
and
they take
the whole
advantage.
system to feel taken care of in that way. It's beautiful. Explain to me how that plays out in the hip hop world
So well,
and know
it's
your
funny.
role, right?
Right. So yeah, so know your role is definitely in hip hop, know your role is a slang. It's know your role, play your position, things of that nature. But in the book, I also kind of equate it to in chapter 1, know your role. There's also I go into the different parenting styles. And so, I related to Wu-Tang. So, the Wu-Tang clan had many styles. There was 9 members, and there was the tiger style, the drunken style, the sword style, and everyone had their own approach to, hip hop in the Wu-Tang clan. Well, fatherhood at different phases of your child's development, you have to approach it with a different style. So, you know, there's the helicopter parent, there's the free range parent, there's the bulldozer parent, there's all these different parenting styles. So and that's kind of the way I relate that
The
is to
tie-in.
Wu-Tang. Yes.
Yeah. So how did you know when you were having kids and you were in the thick of it and you were being peed on and you were changing diapers and you were eating last and going to sleep last, did you have a sense of what kind of parent you were, or only looking back are you able to say, oh, I was a helicopter parent, or I was this? Like, how aware were you?
I wasn't so aware of the style I was in as much as I was aware when it was time for me to adjust my style. I tell a story in the book where my oldest son, who's now 19 and finishing his freshman year at Drexel, at the
Oh,
time he was maybe I think it was 11 or 12 years old at the time when this story happens. And we were late leaving the house one day, and he missed the school bus. And I was like, dude, just walk to school, because the school, for some reason, they give him a bus, but the school is 3 blocks away from us in our Weehawken suburban little town. And he's like, I don't know how to get there. And I'm like, you don't know how to get 3 blocks away? First of all, you go to school every day on this bus. He's like, yeah, but I'm not like paying attention to where I'm going. Like the bus gets me there. And I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? I'm like, okay. So I kind of start to help him map it out. I'm like, all right, so do you know how to get to the playground? The playground where they have recess is the playground he goes to every weekend, leaves my house on his own, goes to the, he just never put two and two together that they were across the street from one another for some
okay.
reason. And maybe it was early, I don't know. But that was when the light bulb went off. I was like, this kid is too, he needs to be more independent. And I have to look for opportunities to set him up for him to use his brain and not so much just be on autopilot all the time. So, you know, that was when I went from more or less the helicopter parent hovering around them all the time to the free range dad. And I was just like, dude, go figure it out. I say in the book, I describe fatherhood as a mirror. And more importantly, when I saw these little humans uh pretty much, you know, regurgitating things that I would say or imitating things that I would do, like, you know, in the book I talk about how I always slap my wife on the butt all the time, and then my son, who's on the cover, smacks her on the butt one day. He's like, give me a bottle. And I'm like, and she just turned around and looked so defeated, and I'm like, oh, that's totally my fault. Like, this is me, you know. And there it is, staring back at me in my face. And so it made me adjust myself to be the man, a better example for them to follow. And I feel like I have 3 sons. All 3 of them are completely different human beings. Like, they're not the same. There are similarities, but they're not the same in any way. They each learn different. They each receive information different. They each have their own love languages, and different tactics work. They have different motivations, which was really important. My oldest son was a people pleaser, so he never wanted to disappoint me. My middle son, it has to make sense for him. He doesn't care if it disappoints you or not. It just needs to make sense to him. And my youngest son is like the selfless one, and he'll give up, you know, whatever. And so each of them needed different things from me to help, you know, to help either protect certain parts of them, or for me to help them get to where you know they need to go. Again, my oldest son is in Drexel. He was an amazing student his whole life. He never needed, you know, help. He never needed any tutors or anything like that. You know, he's on Drexel on almost a full scholarship. You know, the kid is doing amazing. And my middle son is like you know, a heartbeat away from dropping out of high school. He's, you know, a sophomore, and school is just not his thing. And you know, I'm trying to navigate that with him right now. And I'm like, all right, dude, well, next year for your sophomore, no, junior year, we'll do co-op, where you'll be in school for, you know, your required courses, and then you come out at noon or 1 o'clock, and then, you know, you'll come home and I'll teach you he's an amazing editor. I'll teach you how to edit. I'll teach you some production stuff. That way, it's the happy medium. You go to school because you need to, and there's things that you need to learn at school, and you need to have a high school diploma, like at least. And then I'll teach you some skills on the other side that will make you a productive human, and you won't be sleeping on my couch for the rest of my life. You know what I'm saying?
I
So each kid
do.
needs different things, and as a parent, it's also, I'm very aware of the fact that it's not my role to make them who I think they should be or who I want them to be. It's very much my role to meet them where they are and make them the best human beings on the planet and make them the best version of themselves.
Right. But I could see you saying the same thing if you had 3 daughters.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering because that's beautiful advice. And I agree. Like each human being is different. Each human being has a different gender balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sexuality on a spectrum, like all of it. Everyone's different learning styles. I'm with you. Given that
Mm-hmm.
masculinity does play out in hip hop culture the way it does, that you've had your own kind of, even the slap on the ass. I mean, that's such a great example. Oh my God, do I want to raise my kids to slap their mom on the ass? Right. Or some other woman walking down the street.
Right.
Like when my son Milo tries to hump me, I'm like, listen, you can't hump me.
No,
Okay.
dude.
Like you can go hump a stuffed animal, but do not hump me. So there's some like baseline. So could you talk a little bit about that?
I think it just comes back to me being the example. And for my sons, I never really forced any quote unquote masculine concepts on them in terms of manhood as much as we are, respecting their mother is a big deal and a big thing. And while we give them a little leniency with their mouths in terms of we want them to have voices and speak their minds and share their opinions and feel heard and have space for that, at the same time, that's my woman and don't disrespect her, or we're going to have a problem type of thing. You know what I mean?
Back off, kid.
So right, exactly. It's like, dude, that I get you're upset. But that's my woman. As a man, I can't have you talking to my woman in that way. Um, but yeah, so I don't really feel. I also, conversations once they started dating around how men are supposed to behave and how men are supposed to especially interact with your significant other. I feel like those were the conversations that we were having, but I really, again, like, there was very much planted from early on that hip hop is a form of entertainment sonically. It's not something that we live our life in code by. Like I've always been able to separate the entertainment value of something from it being the law and the doctrine of how I live my life. And my sons very much can enjoy those things without taking it to heart as well. But I definitely explained it to them, in that way.
So is there an example of a doctrine someone could take from hip hop and then somehow transfer to living and to parenting, and like that you wouldn't want your kids to
I mean,
do?
there's a lot of that.
Right. So I
Yeah.
just would love for you to speak to that.
I feel like, a lot of it, especially nowadays, man. Oh my God, hip hop nowadays. When I was growing up, it wasn't all, but the majority of it was like glorifying the drug dealer and like, man, how cool is this drug dealer? He sells all these drugs and he's got these cars and women love him. He's like this hyper Superman, and he might shoot you if you look at him wrong. And now it's like, I'm a drug addict, I'm on drugs, and these are the drugs that I take, and these drugs make me feel this way. And so now it's a complete opposite time. And if you're not careful, and if you don't understand that, this is someone else's life, this is someone else's, maybe it's real, maybe it's fictitious, but like, you could definitely go down a wormhole of drugs. And we've even had conversations, and I've always used hip hop as as a teachable moment or talking point. Like I remember when my oldest son was in the car and we were listening to Pharrell and Daft Punk Get Lucky, and I'm like, this song's about sex, and he was like, what? And I'm like, yeah, the song is called Get Lucky. I stay up all night to get lucky. Like, you know, and I was explaining to him the lyrics, what that meant. And he didn't even, it didn't even register to him, but it was a great moment for us to have a conversation around sex. And we've had the same conversation around drugs when a lot of the artists that they were really into were, those artists who spoke about Percocets or lean or Molly and things of that nature. And I had to explain to them, these are the things that they're talking about. How do you feel about it? Have you ever thought about drugs? And, what do you think about it? And so, those are more or less the types of conversations that we have. You letting the music kind of dictate some of the subject matter, and I'm definitely not leaving them to their own devices when they're out here listening to or consuming this stuff.
Did someone do that for you growing up? Like you were saying, hip hop was different and that they were badass drug dealers, whatever it is. Was someone like, hey, don't go down this path?
No, I
No.
had two 20-year-old parents and they didn't censor a thing. They let me have it raw, and there was no conversation about it. Like, I really fell in love with hip hop because my dad was a ridiculous hip hop head, and he would be listening to NWA and F the Police, driving all over, Philly in his Bronco. And at the time I lived with my mom, and my grandfather was a police officer. And so, I'd be in my room in his house listening to F the Police, and he'd come in his police uniform, ready to, let me know, who runs this house. So
Right.
no, I got it unfiltered. I didn't have a guide. But again, because I was such a nerd for it, like I would study it, I would break it down, I would read, different articles and newspaper and magazines, and I would watch all the TV shows, and I would go through the liner notes, and I would read the lyric. Like I was a nerd. So I started putting these themes together and understanding what they were. So I kind of figured it all out on my own, but I was also, depending on how you look at it, a gift and a curse. I grew up, around a lot of addicts, a lot of them being members of my family. So my physical interaction with drugs and seeing it present, I just knew it was something that I never wanted to be a part of. So anytime I heard of it, I just knew really what it was and the real impact that it had on the people that I loved. So, it was a huge deterrent for me, but I can still enjoy all the drug dealing lyrics. They were always
You're like, I love it. When you say you figured it out on your own, what did you figure out?
the slang really was the slang and some of the words that were being used, and what certain things meant that that made the lyrics so so dope, for lack of a better word. It was
I
like,
just figured out why hip hop was so dope.
there it is. This is dope. And that probably was talking about something that wasn't music, but then, we adopted it.
Right. But I
But
mean,
yeah,
were you looking at it in terms of storytelling and culture and what it
very
was
much.
reflecting and like how you understood your voice in all of it? Like
Yeah,
how
I
did
knew
it,
I
yeah.
knew it wasn't I knew there was some autobiographical elements to it. But I also understood that these are probably hyper exaggerated stories. You know what I mean? I understood it, but what I took from it was that the art of storytelling, the fact that I could sit here and listen to someone rapping to me and see everything they're talking about on the screen in my mind, that blew me away. Or just even the way, I was obsessed with the way that how condescending rappers were to each other. And it's like, you're a crumb, and you're, all of these, they would just diss your rhymes are whack, and this. And I loved the machismo and like the vibrato of it all. And that also kind of made me walk around with my chest poked out, and when I would listen to certain artists and feel good about myself. as if I was the MC. So I very much understood that, this rapper right here probably never shot anyone in his life.
Right.
But this one over here, I'm pretty sure he got a
Right.
couple
You
bodies
probably
on him.
did. Right.
Exactly. You could just tell, I could feel, especially growing up in Philly, being very familiar with energy and being around killers. And it's like, yeah, I know your vibe versus someone who's is a lot of talk.
So I'm interested about the machismo, right? Because this
Mm-hmm.
gets into the masculinity that I'm talking about.
Yes.
So you found that empowering.
I did. I found it empowering because I understood it was either it was a character or it was just a source of entertainment. Like I would never in a million years twist my lips to call a woman a B word.
Right.
I would never do that. I was raised by the most amazing women, and I'll never forget one time my mom asked me to do something, and I was really upset about it, though I didn't vocalize it. And she punched me in my chest, and I was like, "Why did you do that?" And she said, "Because you wanted to curse at me." And I was like, "What?" And I didn't say it. And I was like, but I didn't say anything to you. She said, but you wanted to say this. And she said the thing that I was thinking to say, that if I could, I would have said to her. And she was 100% correct. But I knew even if I was thinking about cursing this woman, that clearly wasn't, was going to get me hurt. So, yeah. And I also, like, I grew up with the utmost respect for the women in my household. I always say that I was raised by the Dermalage, the Black Warrior women on Black Panther. Like all of those chicks were the ones who raised me. So like who am I to talk back or be condescending or rude to any woman when I'm being raised by those women. So I also understood that, this is funny for y'all to do, and I'm going to listen to it and enjoy it, but I would never twist my lips to speak or look at a woman in a certain way because of the women I was raised by. Thank God I have an amazing wife who is her nickname. I call her nickname is Notes. She always got notes. I got notes on it. So maybe I should, you should do this and do that. And she's always had a great way of inspiring me to be better without like, berating me or emasculating or butchering. Early on, my approach to fatherhood, especially when my sons were really, really small, was I'm just going to be around and I'm not really going to get involved. And when they get older, we'll have fun and and she's like, you're going to miss everything and they need you now. And they need to, to see how you interact with them. They need to learn from you immediately. And that wasn't something that, I grew up, my father and my mom were separated when I was first born. They didn't get back together until I was 9 years old. So I didn't grow up with my father physically in the household with me every day. So I didn't know how to be every day. And I'm like, what do I do with my hands? Like these little babies, So having her there to see, like, no, like,
They
let's
need your
let's
love.
do
They
this.
need you.
They
Right.
need, and that was all they needed. They just needed my love and they needed my presence and they needed me to play with them and feel seen. They just needed to feel seen by me. And that's really all it was. But it planted such an amazing bond, an amazing relationship with us moving forward. Like I know them in and out, back and forward. My oldest son, Josiah, he's not biologically my son. I came into his life in the role of a father when he was 2 years old. So he's been with me forever.
Yeah.
But they say sometimes the biological relationship you see and you can feel it on a different level. But like, one of the stories I tell him in my book is I remember him, I think it was his freshman year of high school. He was kind of just walking around the house in the morning. He just felt heavy and I just felt it on him. I felt his spirit was just like down. And before he left to go out on to get on the bus, I ran over to him. I gave him a hug and he just melted and started crying, in my arms. And I'm like, dude, what's wrong? Like, what's going on? And he had felt a lot of pressure because he was going to this, he got into this like magnet school in Jersey that's like a really, really good prestigious school. And he was just like, kind of trying to cope and make sure that he was doing well in school. He felt like pressure to perform. And I'm like, dude,
Because he didn't want to, he was the child that didn't want to disappoint you.
exactly,
Yeah, so that makes
exactly.
sense.
And
And
I
he
just
needed
reassured
to,
him.
and he needed to know that you loved him no matter what. And you gave him.
Regardless. Yeah, I remember the day I told him, I was like, I think he was a sophomore. I was like, yo, man, we should start to do some charitable things and things like that, if you want to go to college, to put on your transcript. He was like, if I want to go to college. And I'm like, yeah, if you want to go. Like, I don't know what you want to do, with your life. It was like, he was like, what do you mean if? Like, I don't have to go to college? I'm like, no, you don't have to do anything. You can do whatever you want in life. I'm not going to force you to go to college. Like, you think I want to spend 80 grand because, I think it's cool to tell my friends that you go to school? No, if you don't want to go there, I'm down. Like, what are we doing? Like, you're going to have a plan, but I'm not going to just force you to go to college. It just rocked his world. And a lot of times parents don't realize that their kids have all of these thoughts and like, of especially of expectations, on them that you and they didn't even tell. I'm like, dude, your mom never went to college. I went to a rinky-dink college that I found in the back of the Source magazine. I was there for 2 years and got an associate's degree. What make you think I'm going to force you to go to college? Like, look around, bro. You see any diplomas on any of these walls? No. Like, but again, they think of these things on their own, and their imaginations are amazing, and that's what they feel like is, what their role or their task are, unless you tell them otherwise. We don't care what you do. There's zero expectation on you to be anything in this world except a great human being. That's it. Like, we want you to be empathetic. We want you to be smart. We want you to be others minded. We want you to be mindful of who you are in the space that you take up in this world. Other than that, if you want to go, blow glass and, or you want to be a mechanic, bro, I don't care. I just want you to be happy. I
Yeah.
want you to be fulfilled. And more importantly, I want you to be an amazing person. So you're not embarrassing me out here on these streets.
What do you think is the thing you've changed the most about yourself
Mm.
because you saw it reflected in your kids' behavior?
Um, they definitely taught me to listen. They taught me to shut up. Because what I didn't realize I did, and this came, and I talk about this in the book, is also like my biggest my biggest failure as a father was my son was telling me that he was battling depression in so many words, and I really missed it. And I was just waiting for him to shut up so I could tell him all the reasons why he's not depressed. And I missed the boat. And that was one of those really heavy moments where I'm like, shut up and listen, man. Like, they'll tell you, if you provide that space, if you really, there's one thing for you to tell your kids, you can tell me anything. And there's another thing for you to actively be trying to have open dialogue all the time with them, so that there is a moment always that they can tell you something that's not like oh my God, I got to tell my parent this thing. It's like, if we always talking, then there's always ample amounts of time and opportunity for you to share. So I realize in that moment, sometimes I'm just waiting for people to shut up so I can tell them something or tell them how I feel, as opposed to really just listening intently and trying to be there for them, be supportive of them, listen to them and where they're coming from, so that I can help them, as opposed to, thinking that I know everything and I have all the answers when that moment happened. And thank God I have an amazing wife. And my son then went to my wife and told her the same conversation. And she came to me and was like, he needs therapy. We need to get him to see someone, because he's battling depression. And then I felt like an idiot. And I went to my son and I was like, I'm so sorry that I failed you. I'm so glad that you were smart enough to go talk to mommy about this
Good
after I dropped the
call,
whole
right?
ball. And I really had like a really a deep long combo, and I've apologized to him maybe 3 or 4 times about it. Now he doesn't want me to ever talk to him about it again. He's like so beyond it because
Yeah.
thank God he got the help that he need. And but it for me it was one of those moments that I was just like, dude, you really failed, and it really could have went to a total other way.
Yeah.
And thank God that it didn't. And it was a lesson that I learned. And now I listen probably too much. At the end of the day, my job is to make them great and having conversations with them about subject matter that may be a little uncomfortable. What I used to do, dude, I would embarrass myself for my sons. And I would tell them some of the wildest, most embarrassing moments of my life, just so that they feel like I'm a human being and I'm not like, oh, this is dad, talking. I'm like, dude, I failed. I've dropped the ball here. I've done this. This is an embarrassing time that, I had with a girl, or this is whatever. And so when I'm just like self-deprecating at the same time, then
Yeah.
they feel like, well, if he's willing to tell me that, then there's nothing that I can tell him that's going to be, too much.